was an entrepreneur coming from a therapy background. The way that I always worked was dollars for hours. That's just all that I knew. If you want this service for 2 hours, here's what my hourly rate is. And in the beginning of my business, that was how I structured all of my fees based on how much time it was going to take me. And getting my mind wrapped around creating a package, creating a program, creating value.
Welcome to the Art of Kaizen for Entrepreneurs, growing 1% everyday podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Art of Kaizen for Entrepreneurs podcast. We discuss how to grow 1% every day in both business and in self. Today, we're going to be talking to an entrepreneur that followed her gut and took a leap of faith to pursue her passion and what she felt was needed in this world. Allison Morgan, the owner of Zensational Kids, developed a program that brings yoga and mindfulness into the minds of the younger generation. She's helping young children stay calm, self-regulate, and build lifelong coping and learning skills. Thank you, Allison, for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's super exciting. I have a young 2-year-old daughter. So this whole concept of being emotionally regulated as well as just aware that emotion and thought process are two totally separate things. Yes, emotion affects the thought process, but they are separate. We come together to develop thought and create action. And, I love to hear kind of how this concept started, where your knowledge base came from, and where, this desire to put this out into the world really started.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I am trained and I have a degree in occupational therapy. So occupational therapists really help people of all ages work in their occupation of life. So for kids, it's learning, it's playing, it's interacting. Very early in my career, I started working in schools. As an OT, you work with the children, the students that have the greatest challenge in learning. And I did that for many, many years, preschool through high school. And around when I was hitting my 15-year mark in occupational therapy, I came across just yoga. Not for any reason, but I just started studying it on my own. And what I immediately found is that the practices of yoga, the breath, the movement, the mindfulness were, while I was engaged in the practice and right after, just shifted something within me that then shifted everything around me. And early in on that practice, I was just thinking about all the kids that I was working with that couldn't come to that calm state, could not clear their mind, could not coordinate their body. And these things, even just being the foundation of this is going to affect their ability to learn. I had so much training in so many modalities, but this was just one of those modalities that pulled everything together for me. And I just thought, why aren't we teaching this to our kids, to our students? So I started bringing it into my OT practice. And to make a long story short, what started to happen was I was finding more success in working with students that are having learning challenges using yoga as a modality than everything else that I ever learned. But it was at a time where using the word yoga in schools was sort of no, it was taboo. It was, people just, they didn't want that. So I still was just doing what worked and not giving it a name. And then to totally transition my practice to being a therapist, to starting a company, Zensational Kids, that found ways to teach these practices in a school environment, making it acceptable and really working from, when I started, it was really just working with, we'll say, special education students. So students that were really struggling, to helping everybody, because everybody in a classroom struggles in some way. And what I found is through these practices, every single human being can become more of themselves, or as you said early on, more regulated, more self-regulated, which really allows you to be in your life in a more easeful, joyful, integrated, interactive, communicative way.
Super powerful. I mean, just the understanding that there's so many aspects and modalities, as you said, in life that help us evolve as human beings, and the strength that just yoga brings in, and yoga breaking it down. If you're an entrepreneur, listen to this, and you're like, I've never done yoga and I don't care for yoga. You're missing out. You're missing out big, right? All yoga really comes down to is stretching, right? Which everybody needs. If you're over the age of 30, you know them, right? And then breathing and a conscious thought process behind your breathing to eliminate the cluster in your mind and create focus. And that's really what it helps it do. And Allison finds this modality of yoga and then brings him to school. But as you said, it wasn't really accepted as the term yoga. How has it evolved such
Yeah.
bring
I have to tell you, Kyle, when I started, my colleagues were saying, like, do not tell anybody that you're doing yoga. Like, administration, teachers, don't tell parents. So, what I really had to do was just like you described, yoga is stretching, yoga is breathing, yoga is, clearing your mind. I really had to dive into what research was available on these aspects of yoga so that I was able to show it in a very research based light when people did start asking me in the schools, what are you doing and why are you doing this and how is it helping? So that was a really, really important aspect of me finding success in my company, working with the clients being schools and being able to help them see the benefit in something that they were actually like afraid of in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, in messaging, right? For the business owners,
Totally.
is what right now, yoga and what she is saying with the breathing and stretching, it honestly is the same thing. But the messaging and the positioning of that messaging is what adjusts the mindset, the consumer base. And I've seen this in every type of business imaginable. The businesses that are not so concrete about the terminology that they want, but the message that the consumer wants to receive are the ones that find the best success in their advertisements, in their websites, in their flyers, whatever it might be. You put your terminology of what you'd like to implant into the world in a way that is accepted by the consumer base that you're talking to. And absolutely love that, Allison. Just the R&D that you did, the research you had to do. What did you end up naming it instead of yoga?
So instead of yoga, well, I shouldn't say instead of, but what it really morphed into, because when the company started, it was very much doing yoga with kids on mats in small groups and individual. So it really was very much yoga. But then as the business started growing and I started to see that this is not just for the students on my caseload, so the students that were receiving special education, this really had a place in a full classroom of with all kids. It started to become more of a mindfulness practice because there were no mats. We were doing things at our desk, standing next to our desk. Um, it also by sort of tagging it mindfulness and melding it with social emotional learning, because that's where a lot of the research was coming out of why these things are so important, why the mindfulness, the self-awareness, the self-management was so important. And these were things that I was finding that schools really needed and really resonated for them. So the business grew and we started to shift not only our knowledge base, but also what was needed in the industry of education. We really have tagged it as mindfulness and social emotional learning. And as you were saying, this is really part of the messaging. Like, are we still doing stretching? Yes. Are we still doing breathing? Yes. But we really had to we had to use terminology and words that schools were familiar with and comfortable with rather than pushing something that they were scared of.
Let's go back into the growth because you talked about as it started to grow, you started adapting these things. I would love to understand how you entered the market and then that growth process because it sounds like this is mainly B2B. You're focusing with working directly with the schools, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you break through? How do you have this concept that you know is going to help out as many of these students in the school as possible and then start adapting that into individual schools?
I was really lucky when I started, Kyle, because I started in the building. So I was really able to test out the methods that I was using, the words that I was saying with those people that were going to become my ideal clients in a broader sense. So talking to teachers in a way that teachers can understand what I'm doing and can ask for more. Talking to principals and listening to them of like, what are the problems that you have in your mind? How would you describe your problems? And then I could figure out, well, how do I solve his or her problem based on what I'm doing? And the same for a superintendent. So I was really lucky because I could sit across from these people that were my ideal client and becoming sort of like the avatar of my ideal client and can get immediate feedback. And I say I was lucky because there were so many people when I started my business. There were there were not that many, but there were other people also trying to break into this industry in education. And they came from just like a more of a, let's say, yoga or mindfulness background working with adults. And they're trying to break into this, working in education. And they had a really, really hard time because they didn't know how to speak to that ideal client and explain what it is that they're doing. So I would say that was my gift that I was able to do that, because then I was able to translate it to, okay, if one superintendent is saying this to me or one school principal is saying this to me, what's the likeliness that there are 10 more that are going to express that the same way? So when I first started, a lot of what I was doing was word of mouth. Just we started in New Jersey, and they all talk. What are you doing? What's new? I was invited into a lot of other schools. From there, what I started doing was speaking at a lot of conferences because this was all like, new topic. There was new research coming out, very, very exciting. So speaking at local conferences, speaking at national conferences, and what started out as a service-based company working very locally in one state, I started to develop ways of how can we work with schools that are really, really far away and we can't be there every day. So what kind of training do we need to give their faculty? How do they choose the faculty to take the training? And then how do we support them? So it sort of allowed me to go from, working with, you know, small number of schools, high service, to working with more schools, but we don't have to give them that daily or weekly service.
I want to dive into that a little bit more, but at first, for the entrepreneurs and business owners that are listening to this right now, hear how powerful it is to get your messaging correct. How extraordinary. Allison said it was luck that she was in the opportunity that she was, in the position that she was, to be able to communicate to a really the point of contact. If you're looking at your normal processes of sales and business, her point of contact of how do they want to be spoken to, and how that messaging allowed her to expand a service that was taboo for most people to something that was well accepted by all of these superintendents in these schools, and how powerful that is. If you guys don't believe that messaging is still a core factor of your success, I dare you to put up a billboard with a bad headline and see what kind of success you have compared to one that has an incredibly powerful or a strong headline. And we see it in our video content and our digital content as well today. If you do not have the right hook that brings the consumer to watch the content, it's the same thing. It falls off. And Allison is a great example here of how your messaging catered correctly can lead to huge growth. Allison, what does the business look like today then? If you've now expanded outside of New Jersey and you have this system, how big is the business? Is it all across the US? Is it only inside the B2B category? Do you have B2C as well, like a general consumer? And me as a parent, am I able to sign up for your program? What does it look like today?
So it has changed so much since COVID, because before COVID, we were, high service. We were at schools, we were doing lots of training all over the country. And once COVID hit, a few things changed. So nobody was going to schools. So we couldn't go to schools. So everything started to go through Zoom. The other thing that changed is schools used to have a lot more time to train their faculty. So our training used to be like a 2-day intensive training and then follow up. And it's so rare for schools to have a full faculty that could attend a 2-day training. They just don't have that much time. So we had to pivot, and I hate that word, but I really had to redesign our whole service delivery. And I have to tell you, since COVID, it really has taken a lot of time for me. Probably because of like personal things, along with I only want to do things that are really going to matter, that are really going to move the dial for the end user, for my ideal client. I don't want to just do something just to say, like, okay, we gave them some mindfulness stuff and, they're going to do whatever they're going to do with it. I just have such a connection with, I want to make a difference. And I know that unless you truly understand this product or this service, it's not going to make a difference, because it's just like, for my end user, which is our teachers, it's just going to be like another one of those things for them to do. So to answer your question of, who is this really for? Really, our programs are focused on schools. So while a parent can buy our products, while an individual teacher can buy our products, I really want to make the greatest change, which for a school, you need more than one classroom using the products. So my focus and all of my messaging really is about a whole school creating a shift from the inside out, not just one classroom at a time or one teacher at a time. And I would say the other thing that we really have had a huge shift in, whereas I would say in the past we were really a service oriented company. We're shifting now to more of a product based company. And the point of having a product is, for schools, it's much more economical for them, opposed to paying for my staff coming in and doing all the work with all the students and all of the educators. Where now I've created products where it can feel like we're in your classroom every day, but it's a simple click of a button and we're there, and it's reproducible over and over and over and over again. Because what we're looking for is helping individuals, like the teachers and the students, get an internal shift that is going to support their learning and their life. And in order to create that shift, certain things need to be practiced in short doses. So we have products now that support these practices in a very neurological and physiologically effective way.
And love you explaining the difference between a service and a product. For the business owners, they're two vastly different things. I think a lot of us believe that we are in, say, a product-based business, but you're actually in the service-based business. And some of us are in the service-based business that have the opportunity to leverage products like Allison is talking about what she did with her company, and we're lackluster on that experience. I know us as Kaizen Marketing Agency, we're starting to separate those two separate things, where one is a very hand-holding, one-on-one process with the client, and that is a service. And the other side is a simple, you purchase, you receive product. And as you said, Allison, one is very labor intensive, one is very engaged, but you get a lot of information from running a service, right? You get a lot of back and forth with the client. You're able to optimize your procedures, where the product is more of a standard operating procedure and a copy and paste system that you can repeat on a consistent basis and doesn't need the hand holding process, which, let's be very transparent, hey, is a lot harder to build correctly. A service can have a few problems, but as long as you're there to fix those issues, it's much easier. Product, you can get yourself in some entanglement if you haven't really gone through your research and your development, your overview of the product, the R&D that goes into the post of the purchase, and the process that the person gets after they accept the product, and actually going through those checks and balances. There's a lot more to a product. But Allison, the differentiation you just explained is awesome. Sensational Kids sounds like an incredible product. I know, again, me as a new parent, I have looked into what age do I start getting my daughter to stretching in the morning and breathing and going through those mental practices that will allow her to really understand herself and not be so scared about the environment around her. So Definitely going to be looking into your website for my personal use as we go down, unless one of the schools that we put our daughter into already has a product, which I can only hope for. I would love to dive in now, Allison, a little bit more to you as an entrepreneur, right? When we go through and we develop a business, there's always trials and tribulations and difficulties that we go through to accomplish the goal that we're going after. Do you have a story or anything that you experienced throughout the process of building Sensational Kids that you'd like to share with our listeners here that really changed your mindset in business or taught you something that you use still to this day?
God, there's a million things. There are a million things. Um, something that really changed a lot for me as an entrepreneur, especially as an entrepreneur coming from a therapy background, right? So my whole, like, not vision, but the way that I always worked was dollars for hours. That's just all that I knew. If you want this service for 2 hours, here's what my hourly rate is. And in the beginning of my business, that was how I structured all of my fees based on how much time it was going to take me. And getting my mind wrapped around creating a package, creating a program, creating value, and determining what other things can I do to create value to my end user that doesn't necessarily require that hourly thing. So what can I produce and provide to help get to that end result that I want my clients to have? And I have to say, I had went for business coaching. I hired a business coach, and I didn't even know that that was why I was hiring a business coach. I just knew that I'm working a million hours building this business and out there in schools and speaking at conferences, and like, there's only one of me. Like, how am I gonna do this? But really understanding that changed everything for me. And it's interesting because it's not only about knowing how to build a product package that I can offer my clients, but also wrapping my mind around, so that's what I could charge for this? And it's going to be worth it because they're going to get this outcome. And the business coach that I had, I mean, she was just absolutely amazing. And I will never forget the first school that I presented this package to. And I was so nervous because it was out of my comfort zone. I never did anything like this. And so the way that it was structured is did charge the school for a 30-minute like intro to what is mindfulness in classrooms. So I taught them all something for a half hour and had a meeting set up with the superintendent after to talk about Zensational Kids and how we can work with this district. So the half hour workshop went great. Teachers came up to me after, they loved it. And then I had to race over to the board office to go meet with the superintendent. And I walked into his office and he's like, I've already gotten a bunch of calls from people that were there that they were like they were amazed at what you did with them. So I'm like, okay, that's great. But now I have to show him this program, this paper with all these things that I want to do with them and what I'm going to charge them, and oh my god. So he was just like, so okay, how could we work together? What are we going to do? So I showed him this whole package that I, planned out, and totally nervous about, like, there's a big number at the end of this that I'd never shown anybody before. And we talked for a little while. I explained more about the whole rationale and why each of the things within the program are important and how they support everybody involved. And then he just said, I don't know where we're going to get the money for this, but we have to do this. We have to do this. And I left there and I cried. I went into my car and I called my business coach. And you're not going to believe it. And then, and that was it. That was like, boosted my whole confidence. Yeah, I've got a business here. This is something that I can really bring to schools and really, really create change and not feel like I'm trading hours for dollars.
What a powerful statement, too, for, again, entrepreneurs and business owners that just listen to that. How many times have you been in the position where you're nervous about setting up a new offer or a new structure or changing your payment plan or God forbid, increasing your prices because you're not profitable in your business. I've seen this over and over and over again. And I think we've all felt what Allison explained there, which is that nervousness, that lack of comfort that comes from it. But at the end of the day, if the value that you are bringing is more than the price tag than you have on it, people will pay for it time and time and time again. And sometimes, just like Allison explained here, it just takes a little bit of a leap of faith, a little bit of, I'm just going to try it and see what happens. I love Alex Ramosi. I'm a big fan of him. And he talks about in his book, $100 million Leads, that he literally called the first person, sold the package, and the second person he called, he increased the package cost by $1,000 and then $1,000. And to watch his story of the sales continue to come in as he increases on price really surprised me because I was always, just like you, Allison, in the position of I want to give as much value as physically possible. I want to stretch myself thin and my team thin to give the client a lower cost and the best possible service. At the end of the day, and I think all business owners, we've felt this before. When you do that with the wrong people, you only get abused and your business gets harmed in the long. And Allison, really, I think there's multiple points that you brought up here. The development of how you went into B2B and got the opportunity to really perfect your messaging. And then once you had that messaging perfected, being able to optimize that package so it wasn't a direct your time out for your dollars back in, so you could productize what you're actually selling. And then third, to have the confidence to take that leap of faith to actually pitch the concept and get it out there into the world. And what a beautiful story, Allison. I have two more questions for you, and then we'll call it a day. You've been absolutely incredible. First one is, where do you see Sensational Kids going into the next 12 to 18 months? What is the progression? Where are you going from here?
Yeah, our goal right now is we have a new product. So it really is to get this product into as many schools as we possibly can because we know that it's going to create incredible change in every classroom. This is really, we've been working on this launch all summer and we're about to launch it. So I would say like really in the next 12 months, it's getting this product out there.
Exciting. Well, best of luck with the product launch. I know any new product definitely is difficult to enter into the program, but as long as it matches the system that you already put in place, I'm confident. And with your dedication, your willingness to go after it, I'm confident you're going to find success. My last question for you. How do you find your Kaizen? For the listeners out there, Kaizen is a Japanese business philosophy that means 1% improvement every single day in both business and in self, or taking small steps towards a larger goal. Allison, Sensational Kids has obviously evolved and you've adapted not only your messaging, but your products, your services, and what you're offering to your clients. How do you do it as an entrepreneur? How do you find the ability to wake up every morning and find the desire to improve your business practice, help your clients out more? Do you practice yoga and breathing yourself? Is there anything that you can give for a recommendation to our listeners of how to constantly find that desire to improve?
Yeah. I think it's very recently that I've recognized how important it is to stop work by a certain time during the day and do something that I love. And for so long building my company, all I did was work on my company. And I really neglected that. I'm a very creative person. I'm very artistic. And I just let that kind of rest. I just felt like, well, I'm being creative in my business. So that's enough for me. And I've gotten to this point where it needs to be something not associated with my business that fills me up. And what I find is that when I have something scheduled, like I've taken up sailing. So I've been taking sailing lessons. I've been going sailing a couple of times a week. And it's like kind of a time commitment. But what I find is that the mornings that I get up, I start working, but I know at 2 o'clock I'm going to be on a boat and there's no phone. There's no, like I'm going to be on a boat sailing. So I do really, really good focused work because I want that reward. I want that personal reward at the end. So it's having that. And the other thing is I always start my day in some form of silence. So whether it's I sit on my mat and I'm just breathing, and sometimes it's really, really hard and I'll set my timer. It's like, you're just going to sit here and breathe for like 2 minutes, just 2 minutes where there's nothing but just myself there, no outside noise, really just to like center myself and get myself like ready in a very intentional way where all of me is there.
Oh man, so beautiful. The first one, right? Finding something that makes you happy in this life that's outside of work. Because we all know, even if you love your work and love what you do, there is burnout that happens. There's a Japanese philosophy called ikigai, which means that you need to find a balance in your life for something that makes you wealthy, something that makes you healthy, and something that makes you happy. And I think we all need to understand that balance. Allison, great advice. And the second one, which you've emphasized since the very beginning of this podcast, is the desire to have an understanding of your personal focus, having an understanding of yourself and how to find that position in your mind where you are in the now and in your own mind space instead of clustered with everything around us. As entrepreneurs, we create the world around us. And Allison, you're a great example of that. If someone was looking for more information and want to know more about Zensational Kids as well as yourself, where can they find it? Where they can get connected with you?
Yeah, best place is through our website. It's just Zensational Kids.
Beautiful. That information is going to be found below in the description. If you finish this podcast, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Allison Morgan, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. We'll see everybody on the next one.